Hi, Teri here from Stamping Magic. Welcome back to my channel. Today's project is this small handbag style gift bag. I've used the Peony Dies together with some of the Peony Garden Designer Series paper. And I faceted the sides of the bag so they've got a lovely shape. So let's get started. These are all the measurements you need for all the elements required to create this project. So if you're interested in reproducing it, take a screenshot so you can refer to it later. I'm starting with a piece of the Peony Garden Designer Series paper, and this measures 12 inches by 6 inches. Now I'm using this for the front, the base and the back of my bag. Now you need to ensure that there's no directional pattern on it, otherwise your back is going to be upside down, which is not what you want. So I've chosen my paper, I've placed it into my Simply scoreboard with the longest side across the top, and I'm scoring down at 5 inches and 7 inches. For the sides of my bag I'm using Daffodil Delight cardstock. Now I'm going to place each of these with the longer side across the top, and I'm going to score down at 5 inches. Then I'm going to rotate them clockwise, just a quarter turn, so that score line is towards the bottom, and I'm going to score at 1/2 inch from each side, so that's at 1/2 inch and 2.5 inches. And then I'm going to score down the middle at 1.5 inches, down as far as 3.5 inches. I'm looking at the ruler on the left hand side. So again I'm scoring at 1/2 inch and 2.5 inches, and then at 1.5 inches down the centre, right down to 3.5 inches. And then I'm just going to check to ensure that that middle score line looks even on both pieces. There's now some additional scoring required on both these sections. I'm going to score down from the base of that centre score line down to the bottom corners of that internal rectangular section. Okay, so you don't want to go to the outside edge, you're going down to that inner rectangle. And then I'll go from the bottom of that centre score line up to the top edge as well. So I'm using my scoring stylus and a metal ruler, and I'm going to do the bottom triangle first of all. And then I can do exactly the same thing for the top. Just make sure you keep it within that rectangle. You don't want to go onto the outside tabs. And then I'm going to repeat that for the second piece. There's just a little bit of cutting required to prepare these side pieces. Now in the bottom corners you've got this tiny little square, and that needs to be cut away, and then all the tabs on around the outside are going to have their sides slant cut. So I'm going to cut away each of the corners, and then I'm going to take a diagonal cut on the sides of each of those remaining tabs. And then I'm going to repeat that again for the second piece. I'm now going to fold on all the score lines and burnish them with my bone folder. All the tabs just fold in as normal, and then the triangular or the diagonal score lines, they're to be mountain folds, and then the middle score line at the top of the piece, that's going to be a valley fold. I'm also going to fold and burnish the score lines on the Designer Series paper panel. I've gone ahead and die cut the piece I'm going to use for the lid of my bag, and this is in basic grey cardstock. I used one of the Celebration labels dies for this, and this is the largest one. And then I've also embossed it, and I used the Dainty Diamonds 3D embossing folder for this. Now this folder is only just large enough for this piece to fit, but it does fit. So you can either use this size folder or any 6x6 ones that you have. I want to score this down the centre lengthways. I've already marked my scoreboard with a line down one of the grooves, so I'm just aligning the centre points of this die cut with that score line, and then I can score right down the centre. I can then fold this in half and just gently burnish the fold with my fingers. You don't want to burnish with a bone folder because you'll erase all that lovely embossing. I'm now going to punch 2 holes for the ribbon handle. Now it doesn't really matter how far in you punch these, I'm just going to go the depth of my crocodile. Now the crocodile has 2 hole punches, a larger and a smaller. I'm using the smaller one because my ribbon's quite narrow. I'm actually going to do this off camera so I can line it up properly, but you want to make sure that that centre score line goes through the hole you punched on each side. And here it is done. So the holes worked out to be about an inch from each side edge. And you can see you've got half the hole on one side and half on the other. The ribbon I'm using is our Ruched Daffodil Delight ribbon, and this is about 1/4 of an inch wide. I'm going to secure the ribbon using some of our tear and tape adhesive, and I'm going to layer 3 pieces under each of the punched holes and then remove the backing. Then I can thread each end of the ribbon through and secure it onto the adhesive. Just make sure your ribbon isn't twisted before you secure it. I started with an 11-inch length of ribbon, but I did cut off about an inch. Then I'm going to take some more tear and tape adhesive and add some little strips over the top of the ribbon, and this will ensure that the ribbon does not pull through at all. This lid section will be attached to the top of the back section on your main piece. So you want to decide which is going to be your back first of all and have that ready. Now I've removed the backings from the tape adhesive and I'm going to cover with wet adhesive to secure it onto my bag. But I just want to leave the top of those side edges free because they will actually overhang the bag just slightly. Now I'm going to add my wet adhesive over the tape adhesive, and I'm doing this so I'll have some wiggle room when I actually position this piece. And then I can put it into position, and you can just see on those side edges that there is a tiny little overhang. and you want to place it right up next to that score line. Now if you did manage to get any glue where you didn't want it, if you just go over it with your embossing buddy, that will remove any sticky. Now I can add the side pieces. I'm going to do the bottom tab first of all, and you need to make sure that the glue goes on the outside of the side piece and it's glued to the inside of your main section. So all the score lines should line up, the ones going horizontally, and the edge of your main bag section should go up against the score line on your side piece. I have an additional piece of basic grey cardstock here, and I'm going to position this on the inside base of the bag, and this will reinforce it slightly and also cover those tabs. Now I've cut this to a little under 6 inches by 2 inches. I can now go ahead and fix the side tabs to the front and the back sections of the gift bag. I'm going to do both the back tabs first of all. So I'm going to use wet glue again. You can use tape adhesive if you like, just make sure it's a strong one. I'll cover the tab with glue, and then I'm going to move the back panel up to the side section, and I'm aligning the edge of it right on that score line of the side section, and then I'll give it a good press down. Now if you get glue oozing out, which I tend to do, just again dab it with your embossing buddy and that'll take away any stickiness. I'm using Velcro dots for my closure, but alternatively you could use magnets if you prefer. Now I'm going to add 2 so the sides don't lift up on my flap, they stay nice and flat. So I've positioned 2 and given them a good press down, and then I'm going to add the others on top of it with a sticky side up. And then I can close my bag and just give them a little press, carefully open them and then give them a good press into position. These are the peony dies that I'm using to create the large flower to decorate my bag. Now I've separated mine onto 2 magnetic sheets. The first one holds all the outline dies that coordinate with the stamp set, and the second one holds all the dies that I need to build my flower. Now I've cut all of these from our cardstock vellum. I've also used the largest of the flower dies to cut some Daffodil Delight card. I've just cut one piece using each of the dies, and I'm now going to colour all of these using the Stampin' Blends alcohol markers. Now when you colour them, you want to do them on the wrong side, and you can recognise that by the slightly raised edges. Now I'm taking my dark Daffodil Delight blends, and using the side of the brush tip, I'm just running that over each of the vellum pieces. And you want to use very light pressure when you do this. If you press too hard, then you'll damage the tips. The three little accent pieces need to be added onto the main leaves. I'm using wet glue again for this, but bear in mind when the vellum gets wet it tends to curl up a bit, so you'll need to press them down thoroughly to get them to stick. Once all the pieces are dry, and it only takes a few seconds, I can start putting the flower together. Now there are 4 pieces to the large flower, and each of these slot into the one slightly larger. And I like to slot these in from the bottom. And you'll find that the bottom edge lines up perfectly with each one. Now I'm going to secure these into position just by adding a little wet glue along that bottom edge, and you'll find that when this dries you won't really notice it on the finished flower. Just bear in mind with the vellum that it does take a little bit longer to dry. Okay, so I've put the first 2 pieces together, the smaller ones, and now I'm going to slot them in from the bottom to the 3rd size up. Again, add glue along that bottom edge, line it up and press it all together. And then I can add my final piece. I'm also going to add a small dollop of wet glue just between the back 2 layers. I can now add the stamen piece right in the centre of the flower. Now you could leave your flower exactly as it is, but if you added dimensionals to the back of it now, they would show. So I'm going to back it with that piece of cardstock that I die cut using the larger flower piece. Now alternatively you could back it with a white cardstock layer, and that would leave your flower much more translucent looking. So if that's the effect you want, you could use a white one, but I'm going to stick with the yellow because this will also intensify the colour. Now I'm going to attach it to the cardstock flower just using some mini glue dots. I've added dimensionals to the back of the cardstock layer, and I've removed the backing from the 2 pieces at the bottom, and I'm now going to position my leaves. Then I can remove the backings from the remaining dimensionals, and I'm going to add a little wet glue just on the parts of the leaves that won't show from the front. And then I can position my flower onto the front of my gift bag. If you want to add a little more dimension to your flower, then you can curl the tops of the petals back towards you. And that's it. That's my bag complete. It's a really good size, so you could get some beautiful gifts in here. And I love the shape on the sides of the bag. This is the card that I created to go with my gift bag. And I used exactly the same products. The grey mat is just a smaller size to the one I used for the lid of the bag. And the sentiment comes from the Peaceful Moment stamp set. And this was my prototype bag for this project. Now for this one I used some of our retired woven threads designer series paper. And instead of using cardstock on the sides, I used more of that designer series paper. And I think it looks lovely, and it's absolutely fine. It's not as strong as the cardstock, but that's not an issue. The colour of the flower is Purple Posy. And my last sample, for this one, I used the Boho Indigo Product Medley Kit, the designer series paper in there. The sides are vanilla cardstock and they were embossed using the Ornate Floral embossing folder. Now this paper is only 6 inches square, so I constructed it slightly differently. Rather than have one piece for the back, base and front, I had 3 separate pieces and joined them together. And this is a great method if you've got directional patterned designer series paper, because you add your front and back sections independently, so you can cater for a one-way design. I used cardstock this time for the flower and leaves, and the colour of the flower is Night of Navy. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this project. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notifications bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. Bye for now.